Is it okay to have flat characters in your writing? Do all your characters have to play some major role in the story? Is it okay to have a character named Jim or Jimmy or Bob? Today's topic is all about flat characters, so let's head into the storm. Okay, right. Hello, writers, and welcome back to Spooky Writes. My name's Kemal Onor, and today we're talking all about flat characters. And flat characters is one of the most common critiques that I remember seeing in all my workshops. It's this character seems flat, and this character needs to be developed. But are all flat characters necessarily a bad thing? That's what we're looking to answer on this week's episode. So make sure you hit subscribe. I post videos Monday and Friday and then shorts between those days. So make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you ring that notification bell. Lets you know whenever I post a video. Today I'll be answering your questions about two-dimensional characters. What are they? Are they necessary to a story? Are they always a negative? So let's start off by answering the question, what is a two-dimensional character? What is a flat character? Unlike a three-dimensional character, two-dimensional characters are limited in their movement to left to right. Bad joke, I know. Sorry. But flat characters are those characters that are never developed much. They're typically in one scene, and they don't hold much significance to the overall story. And they're different than that of your fully fleshed out, your rounded characters. Your rounded characters should very much be your protagonist characters, because your protagonist characters are the characters that your readers should know the most about. These are the characters that your readers need to be intimate with. These are the characters that your reader needs to know the most about, because your protagonist characters are central to the overall conflict occurring within the story, unlike 2D flat characters, which are typically in a scene. They come in, they do their part, then they leave. They're a cashier at a supermarket. They're typically a background character. They might be a character that sells a character the plane ticket. Flat characters are those characters we typically don't know a lot about, and authors have either knowingly or unknowingly decided to leave their backstory out of the story because it's just not relevant to what the conflict in the story is. It's not pertinent to the issues at hand. There's no need to fill pages and pages of background exposition about a character's love for Taylor Swift tickets if it's just a one-off character, if it just happens to be, the character at a gas station, maybe the cashier. There's no need to go into how this cashier has a secret affinity for Taylor Swift music. But does this mean that these characters are poorly written? Does this mean that the author is just lazy by not filling in the backstory of a cashier or a one-off character who comes into a scene and then leaves, and we never see him or her again in the story? Is that lazy writing? It's commonly a critique of beginning authors that this character feels two-dimensional, this character doesn't feel fully developed, fully fleshed out. And the issue is that you don't want all your characters to be fully fleshed out. You have to have a balance. You have to have some characters that simply serve their purpose, then go on their way. You have to have two-dimensional characters in your stories. Otherwise, the reader is going to have a very hard time picking up on who the actual protagonist is and who the conflict is revolving around, if we're getting pages and pages of backstory about every minute character who comes into a scene and then we never hear from them again. What happened about Tom and Tom's dog? So it's just so important to have this balance. And if you have a character that feels flat and doesn't feel fully developed, you can always add more development. But again, I would highly recommend that you have this balance. Not every sentence has to be action-packed. You have to have a give and take Just like not every character has to be fully developed. Not every character has to have 5-10 pages of backstory and exposition. We don't need to know every single detail about every minute character that comes into a scene and then we never hear from him or her again. It doesn't do anything to add to the story. And when you're writing short stories, word count is you have to be cognizant of your word count. You have to be so attentive to how each word and each sentence is progressing the story. And if you stop in the middle to give us 5 pages of exposition about how Lisa had a road trip across the country after her favorite cat passed away, and this has no relevance on the story whatsoever. It's something that you should just cut. And maybe it's something, and a lot of times we might write characters flat in early drafts. We might write characters and we might just kind of gloss over these characters in the first few drafts. The author, as you write more, as you start to edit and go back and revise, you can sort of pick up on more things and start to fully develop your protagonist characters. And ideally, sometimes you don't even need to have so many two-dimensional characters. You don't need to have so many characters in the background. Very similar to my elementary school plays, in the background, it's not every character is essential. Not every character is necessary. And oftentimes you can do away with a lot of the flat characters. You just have a character. You can gloss over the fact that the character walks into a gas station and pays for his or her gas, or that the character buys a plane ticket. You don't need to show an interaction between and the ticket seller or a character who's just a one-off character. Many times you can cut these flat characters, but you do need to have a balance between your fully fleshed out, fully three-dimensional developed characters who are your protagonists, and then you need to have some flat characters to juxtaposition those protagonist characters with these characters that come in for a scene, and we're not concerned with them as readers. We're not concerned about these characters who come in for a scene because they're not supposed to be fully developed. There's no need to have a full backstory. You don't have to give them every single character a first, last, and middle name. You can say, oh, the cashier. You can say Frank or Bob. You can certainly have characters with just a first name in stories, and especially short stories, because every sentence needs to count. You need to be highly focused in the story that you're telling. You need to be highly focused in who the story is about. You need to be highly focused on the conflict, which revolves around the protagonist characters. Starting to fill in your two-dimensional characters, it's taking away from your protagonist story. It's taking away from the major conflict in the story. And this will result in your story being kind of thin throughout. So I highly recommend that you limit the amount of flat characters that you have, and that you do your best to focus on your protagonist. Do your best to focus on the fully fleshed out characters, and just have these other characters kind of be passerbys, have as the character drives past, or glimpses as the character goes into a store, buys his item, leaves, goes on his way, and we don't have to have these long, lengthy expositions that bring the plot to a grinding halt to suddenly tell us about how Janet used to run her own bookstore before she moved to Montana. But another thing of caution is that if you're writing a horror story and you're just killing off randos is not going to evoke the same amount of emotion from a reader that killing off a protagonist would, because when you kill off randos in a story, these are characters that the reader is not attached to, and they don't know a lot about this character. And oftentimes, especially in like slasher films, there'll be characters that we have no idea about really who they are, and they're just there to be sort of cannon fodder for the monster. They're there just to die, and it's not scary. And especially in literature, you need to have characters that you have given an emotional tie to the reader. You need to kill off those characters, and those characters you need to have fully fleshed out. But killing off flat characters who are just random randos in your story it's not going to build the same kind of tension. It's not going to build the same emotional pull in your story that killing off a major character, killing off a character that has built a relationship with your reader will. So hopefully that was able to answer all your questions about flat characters. Yes, they do serve a purpose in your stories. yes, you do need them, and yes, they are not lazy characters. Sometimes they come out of necessity. There has to be a character there to greet the character as they walk into the hotel. There has to be that character who carries the protagonist's bags. There has to be that character who is the bus driver. There has to be that character who sells the ticket, and they are just kind of this character who happened to be there, but there's no need to have every character be fully developed. So that's going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep it spooky. And of course, here's your writing prompt for sticking all the way through the video. The cashier gave Jack his coffee, then blank. So set your timer and start writing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.